Welcome back. The European leaders are holding an emergency summit today as they scramble to increase their military budgets and bolster aid to Ukraine amid concerns about waning support from the U.S. President Zelensky received a warm welcome by EU leaders at that summit, in stark contrast to the tense meeting in the Oval Office last week. While European leaders huddle, President Trump warned that the U.S. might not defend NATO countries who do not meet the defense spending threshold.
If you're not going to pay, we're not going to defend. I said that 7 years ago. And because of that, they paid hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, if you're not going to pay your bills, we're not going to defend you.
Are you going to make that policy, U.S. policy, that the U.S. wouldn't defend NATO countries that don't pay?
Well, I think it's common sense, right? If they don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. No, I'm not going to defend them. I got into a lot of heat when I said that. You said, oh, he's violating NATO. And, you know, the biggest problem I have with NATO, I really, I know the guys very well. They're friends of mine. But if the United States was in trouble and we called them, we said, we got a problem. France, we got a problem. A couple of others I won't mention. Do you think they're going to come and protect us? They're supposed to. I'm not so sure.
So why stay in NATO at all?
I view NATO as potentially good, but you gotta get some good thinking in NATO. It's very unfair what's been happening.
Meanwhile, NBC News is exclusively reporting that as the Trump administration appears to turn towards Russia, some U.S. allies are now thinking about scaling back the intelligence they share with the U.S. Joining me now is NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Kube, who reported on both of those stories. Courtney, congratulations on two great scoops. Let's start with NATO and this potential policy shift by the Trump administration. What does it mean for Article 5, which basically says an attack against one is an attack against all?
Well, what we were reporting is basically what President Trump just confirmed in the Oval Office, and that is that the Trump administration has been considering sort of calibrating their support for NATO and NATO allies based off of the members who pay the most. So if you have a member who pays above the threshold, the percent of their GDP on defense that the Trump administration thinks is appropriate, then they would consider defending them in the case of an Article 5 violation, or of course the part of the Washington Treaty that says if one NATO member is attacked, all consider themselves to have been attacked. But it's not just Article 5 that's under consideration here, Kristen. This potential decrease in support to NATO by the United States could also see the Trump administration basically calibrating which exercises, military exercises, they would participate in based off whether the countries are meeting this threshold, this monetary threshold. And it could also determine where U.S. military troops will be stationed and where they could be withdrawn from. So right now, NATO says that all members are supposed to pay 2% of their GDP towards defense. The Trump administration has been calling now for several weeks for that to be increased to 5%. Kristen, I have to say the U.S. doesn't pay 5%. We're right around 3.9% as of 2024.
Yeah, I think it's so important to point that out, that the United States doesn't pay 5%. Courtney, how extraordinary that he, and I think we have to put a fine point on this, confirmed your reporting from earlier in the day, and just notable to hear him talk about that. You also have exclusive reporting about allies possibly scaling back intelligence sharing with the United States. What are the biggest concerns that you're hearing on the world stage?
Yeah, and Kristen, again, these are some of the historically closest United States allies who have established this group called the Five Eyes. It's 5 nations that share this very highly classified technical intelligence information with one another at higher levels than they share intelligence with other nations. Now, some of these allies are now concerned that the United States seems to be trying to normalize relations with Russia. President Trump has spoken pretty openly about that effort. Because of that, they are concerned now about sharing some of that most sensitive information with the United States. And really at issue here, Kristen, is the foreign assets. They are concerned that some of their foreign assets, individuals, could potentially be compromised, their identities. And that is why they are now discussing the possibility of not sharing as openly as they have with the United States in the past.
All right, Courtney Kube, thank you so much. We really appreciate your reporting.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.